Polygraphs that save people's lives. Let's talk about them.
Welcome to Inside the Polygraph. I'm your host, David Goldberg, expert polygraph examiner. Join me as I and my guests break down the facts, fictions of polygraph testing, law enforcement, and so much more. Real cases, real conversations. The truth is always revealed inside the polygraph.
On today's episode, we're going to be talking about polygraph tests that ultimately saved lives. But before we get started, I do want to read this, and here we go. I want to begin by saying whether you're a firm believer in polygraph testing or a strong critic and skeptic, the polygraph has been around for over a century, and for decades it has played a significant role in resolving complex situations, from solving criminal cases, exonerating the innocent, to protecting children from harm, and even helping repair relationships. Now, I'm not going to sit here and claim that every polygraph test has been perfectly administered. The truth is, poorly conducted exams by inexperienced examiners have caused real harm. And it would be a disservice to you, my listeners, if I didn't acknowledge that. To ignore the flaws would be to ignore the truth, and that is not what I'm here for. And Inside the Polygraph with David Goldberg, I'm here to give you the truth. Like everything in life, there is always two sides to every story and two thoughts about everything. And everyone is entitled to their own opinion. That's what makes America great: the freedom to choose, the freedom to speak, and the freedom to do what's best for yourself and your family. I'm not here to persuade anyone to do anything they don't believe in. This podcast is about shedding light on the options available, especially for those who feel unheard, misunderstood, or falsely accused. It's about helping you protect what matters most: your name, your integrity, and your reputation. Every single person is born with these three powerful qualities. They're yours, they're free, and they're meant to last a lifetime. So why wouldn't you want to protect what's truly yours? Far too many people lose two of these three vital qualities: their integrity and their reputation, due to false allegations, flawed investigations, and lack of evidence. It's time to stand up for what's rightfully yours, explore the meaningful options that can help uncover your truth, options you may not have ever even considered or were available to you. At the end of the day, your reputation is one of the few things in life that truly last. Money comes and goes. Real friends are few and between, and some you count as friends are fake. Even family can fall apart. But your word is truth and echoes far beyond the moment it's spoken. If people can't believe and trust in what you say, then what do you really have? Today, I want to share in amazing real-life cases that polygraph tests was used in helping solve high-stakes cases that were done by professional examiners around the country. And let's begin. In 1971, James Elkins, an Oregon man, was wrongly convicted of raping a 6-year-old girl based on eyewitness misidentification. Elkins served several years in prison until new DNA evidence had emerged decades later, exonerating him. However, prior to DNA evidence, the reinvestigation and polygraph tests were used to reassess the credibility of witnesses and potential suspects. These tests helped guide the investigation towards the actual perpetrator, who was ultimately identified later through DNA evidence and helped exonerate James from prison. And I know what everyone's going to say. Well, DNA was actually the ultimate evidence that exonerated him. So true. DNA did. However, ladies and gentlemen, prior to the DNA testing, polygraph test was used for the new witnesses and the suspected suspect, in which the results of that polygraph test led to testing in DNA that ultimately concluded that James was an innocent individual wrongly convicted based on the evidence or based on the fraudulent eyewitness account of him. And this is what I want to also tell you. With having over 30 years of law enforcement criminal justice experience, I had seen a lot of this in my career, both where I worked and other areas, where eyewitness account counted for a lot of the investigation and criminal charges of individuals, and that was what sometimes the only evidence that was around. And polygraph tests should have been used and still should be used to test those so-called eyewitnesses and their accounts and vet these eyewitnesses to verify whether they are true, whether they're fabricating what they saw, and whether or not these eyewitnesses have motives. Because a lot of times, ladies and gentlemen, these eyewitnesses do have motives to get after someone, and people are falsely convicted based on eyewitness testimony that is fraudulent, fabricated, and made up. But these eyewitnesses are made to be heroes of a case, and there's no vetting of them. And polygraph testing should be utilized more so for eyewitness account that would help lessen the criminal convictions or false imprisonment of innocent individuals, if that's all there is misidentification by eyewitnesses.
Have you been accused of one of the following in your life, such as infidelity, custody matters, CPS investigations, or serious criminal matters that you're currently being investigated for? At Executive Protection Group Polygraph Service, we have been helping thousands of individuals for over 24 years, no matter who you are or what you have been accused of, with the highest accuracy, integrity, and overall compassion to everyone's needs. We are not your typical polygraph or lie detection service. At Executive Protection Group Polygraph Service, we are certified experts recognized in courts throughout the country, and we stand by our promise to give you full closure and all your needed answers. Call at 757-495-1301 and visit our website at www.executiveprotectiongrp.com to get started.
Let's continue on with the next case that was resolved by a professional polygraph examiner. In 1994, and you've probably all seen this, Susan Smith reported that her two young sons had been kidnapped during a carjacking in South Carolina. Smith had underwent a polygraph test, and the results indicated that she was lying, and it came back deceptive. Under intense scrutiny and additional questioning by the investigators, Smith eventually confessed to drowning her children by driving her car in the lake. And obviously, the car was recovered with the children still strapped in their car seats in the vehicle. The polygraph test played a very significant role in uncovering the truth behind her false claims. And as you know, she was convicted in trial and served time, and I think she's still either serving time, I believe. In December of 2010, 7-year-old Jarellis Rivera went missing from her apartment complex in Canton, Georgia. Her body was found 3 days later, brutally murdered and hidden in a dumpster. During the investigation, Ryan Brune, a newly hired maintenance worker at the complex, became a potential suspect. Brune initially denied any involvement in the missing child, but after failing a polygraph test, he later confessed to his involvement and to murdering Jarellis. The polygraph test was pivotal in securing Brune's confession and ultimately bringing him to justice for that child's murder. In May of 2023, a married man of 2 children, aged 3 and 5.5, was in a heated divorce and custody battle with his wife. But prior to this, in 2020, the man's wife had a previous allegation of sexual abuse to the man's biological daughter, who was 5.5 at the time. And this occurred in another state in the Midwest where they were residing. CPS investigated, the police investigated, and after an extensive investigation, they found that it was unfounded and unsubstantiated. After several weeks of that child being in a forensic interview process, that child admitted that that child was lying based on questioning by their mother, and that's what the mother wanted to hear. Lo and behold, the whole family moved from the Midwest to the East Coast. And in 2023, the mother now made allegations of the son against the father. And CPS, once again, police investigated the matter, but this time the father was now charged. The attorney called the polygraph examiner. The polygraph examiner gave an extensive test on the father, but the examiner went one step further and said, even though you were not charged with the daughter, there is a potential bringing that back up later, now that you're in a different state. So that examiner decided, I think I'll test you for that. That examiner gave an extensive test for both children. The father passed both extensive examinations on ever sexually abusing his 2 children. The results were passed on to the attorney. The attorney did, in fact, present those results in a court of law, where a lot of people say they can't be, but they were. And that father was found not guilty. Charges were dismissed. And the caveat was the mother was charged with child neglect for coercing the children to say that their father was in fact abusing the children, and custody was awarded to the father. Polygraph testing on that case was absolutely pivotal in all of it, because the police charged when they shouldn't have. CPS believed the child over anything else, and it was later proven based on the polygraph and later in therapy, the children did admit that the mother did coerce them in saying this because she wanted power and control over the father so that she could have the children and take the children away from the father. As a polygraph examiner, I can't tell you enough how many times that these are the kind of cases that I deal with all the time when it comes to relationships that go wrong, and that there's power and control when it comes to children. One party is accusing another party of abuse of a child or whatever, And it's all about power and control. Who's going to have the children has the power and has the control over another party. However, the child is the one that's ultimately affected because they're in the middle and the parents don't really care about that. The one that's being accused does care. And what's the one being accused? They have to prove their innocence, where the one accusing them doesn't. And ladies and gentlemen, those that decide that there are options out there by taking a polygraph test and proving their innocence and proving that they didn't do something that they're falsely accused of, that goes a long way, because ultimately it exonerates them and it helps them clear their name in whatever issue that's out there, whether it's custody, whether it's an accusation in a relationship, whether you're working for someone and you're accused of theft, you name it, it can clear your name. And as I mentioned in the very first opening, your reputation, your integrity, and your word is really all you have in life, because everything else goes away very quickly. Money, friends, and sometimes family. And your word is everything. So these are options that you have in life that you may not have ever considered seeking out a polygraph examination. And if you haven't, and you're currently going through something that's needing closure and needing clarity, think about that. But before you do, and I've said this over and I'll probably say it every time I'm on this podcast, you need to vet and look for a professional examiner that has experience, that has referrals, great reviews, and has never been sued, has never lost contracts, and those are the examiners that you want. There are examiners out there that I would never, ever recommend, and there are examiners that I would recommend, but you need to do your own research, and that's what I recommend. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're hearing on this podcast, please comment, share, and like. And I want to thank you again for listening and for sending in your comments. Have a wonderful day, and if I can help you, you know how to reach me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you truly liked what you heard today, please be sure to rate the show, share with others, and subscribe for more episodes.